It is Friday, February 20, 2026. And if you have been doom scrolling through financial news for the last year, holding your breath for the global trade war to just finally explode, well, you might want to sit down.
Yeah, definitely sit down for this one.
Because the explosion didn't happen in a port in Shanghai or like a factory in Detroit. It happened literally this morning, right on the steps of the Supreme Court.
And it really is a shockwave. I mean, we aren't just talking about some minor legal adjustment here. We are talking about the Supreme Court basically taking a sledgehammer to the absolute core of the America First trade agenda.
Exactly. The decision in Learning Resources v. Trump and Trump v. V.O.S. Selections, Inc., those just dropped a few hours ago. And the headline is simple, but the implications are just massive. The president cannot unilaterally tax the entire world just by declaring a national emergency.
Right. It's a massive check on executive power.
Hmm.
Maybe the biggest we've seen in trade policy in 50 years. It fundamentally changes the game for literally every business that moves goods across a border.
So welcome to the deep dive. Today, we are unpacking this completely historic ruling. We've combed through the majority opinion, the stinging dissents, the industry reactions, and the absolute chaos that is unfolding at U.S. Customs right now.
Pure chaos.
Yeah. Our mission is to figure out what this means for the separation of powers, why your next car might suddenly get cheaper, and why lawyers are calling the next few weeks the Great Refund Scramble.
And that scramble involves somewhere around $180 billion. So the stakes are incredibly high for everyone involved.
Right. $180 billion. Let's start with the players, because this fight didn't start with, a titan of industry. It wasn't Amazon or General Motors leading the charge against the White House.
No, and that's often how these landmark constitutional cases start with the little guys. The lead plaintiff was Learning Resources. They are a company based in Vernon Hills, Illinois.
Vernon Hills, okay.
Yeah, and they make educational toys. So plastic counters, math games, those colorful sorting bears you see in kindergarten classrooms.
And the co-plaintiff was V.O.S. Selections, right?
Right, a wine importer. So you have a toy company and a wine merchant taking on the president of the United States.
It honestly sounds like the setup to a joke, but they were dead serious.
They had to be. Along with a coalition of other small businesses in states like Oregon, they were staring at an existential crisis. They were suing the Trump administration over the use of IEEPA, the International Emergency Economic Powers Act.
We have heard that acronym IEEPA constantly since early 2025. But just for the sake of clarity, let's define exactly what the administration was doing with it. What was the actual mechanism here?
So back in early 2025, the president imposed what he called reciprocal tariffs. It was a 10% blanket tax on imports from almost everywhere. Then he added specific, highly targeted tariffs on Canada, Mexico, and China, tying them explicitly to border security and the fentanyl crisis.
And the legal hook was that the trade deficit and drug trafficking were, quote, unusual and extraordinary threats to the United States.
Correct. That is the exact language of the statute. Under IEEPA, if the president declares a national emergency regarding an unusual and extraordinary threat, he gets incredible power to regulate commerce. The administration's argument was straightforward. Regulating commerce includes the power to slap tariffs on goods to stop those threats.
I mean, it sounds plausible on the surface. If you can stop trade entirely like a full embargo, surely you can just tax it, right? That seems like a lesser power. If I can ban a toy, surely I can tax the toy.
That was the administration's exact logic. The greater power includes the lesser power argument. It's a very standard legal defense. But the Supreme Court, in a 6-3 decision today, said absolutely not.
And the lineup of justices was interesting. Chief Justice Roberts wrote the opinion, joined by Justices Sotomayor, Kagan, Jackson, but also Gorsuch and Barrett.
Right. You have a mix of the liberal wing and the textualist conservatives. And their reasoning really comes down to a high school civics lesson, the separation of powers.
This is the real aha moment of the ruling. Walk us through the distinction they drew, because it all hinges on vocabulary.
It completely comes down to 2 words, regulate versus tax. The court ruled that IEEPA authorizes the president to regulate commerce. Think sanctions. Freezing bank accounts, stopping a ship from docking, blocking trade with a hostile nation like North Korea or Iran. That is regulation. That is what the law was built for, to cut off economic flow to an enemy.
But a tariff isn't cutting off flow, it's collecting money.
Exactly. A tariff is a revenue-generating tool. And under the Constitution, revenue belongs to Congress. Article I gives Congress, not the president, the power to lay and collect taxes and duties.
So the court looked at the text of the law itself and drew that line.
They did a deep textual analysis. They basically said, look, In other laws, when Congress wants the president to adjust tariffs, they use the word tariff or duty explicitly. In IEPA, they didn't. They just said regulate.
So by omitting the word tariff, Congress implicitly withheld that power.
Precisely. If Congress wanted to hand over the keys to the entire federal revenue system to the president during an emergency, they would have said so explicitly. You can't just infer the power to tax.
This touches on something we see a lot in recent Supreme Court history, the major questions doctrine. Did that come up here?
It was the backbone of the decision. For those who aren't legal nerds, the major questions doctrine is this principle that says if an agency, or in this case, the president, claims the power to do something of vast economic and political significance, they need clear, explicit permission from Congress. You can't find a vague word in an old statute and use it to rewire the global economy.
And I imagine unilaterally taxing the entire world definitely counts as vast economic significance.
It defines it. We're talking about trillions of dollars in trade. The court said IEPA's text was just too vague to support such a massive power grab. You cannot use a generic regulate clause to rewrite the tax code.
There's a historical angle here too, right? IEEPA isn't a wartime law.
No, and that's crucial context. IEEPA was passed in 1977. It replaced the trading with the Enemy Act, or TWIA. TWIA did allow for wartime tariffs, but IEPA was passed in the shadow of Watergate. It was specifically designed to constrain emergency powers, not expand them. The court basically said you can't take a law designed to limit the president during peacetime and use it to claim wartime-level authority.
Now, it wasn't a unanimous decision. Justices Thomas, Alito, and Kavanaugh dissented. What was their counter-argument?
Theirs was an argument for deference. They believe that when it comes to national security and foreign affairs, judges shouldn't be second-guessing the commander-in-chief. They argued that regulating importation is broad enough to include tariffs if the president determines it's necessary to deal with a threat like fentanyl.
So they prioritized the flexibility of the executive to handle threats over the strict textual separation of powers.
Exactly. They argued that the court is tying the president's hands in a dangerous world.
Yeah.
But they lost. And because they lost, the tariffs are dead, effective immediately.
Let's talk about the fallout. Because while the lawyers are arguing over text, the economy is reacting in real time. This has to be a massive relief for importers.
Relief is an understatement. It's more like a stay of execution. Look at the automotive industry. They were in total panic mode.
I saw BMW and Hyundai stocks jumped immediately after the news broke this morning.
They did. And here's why. Automakers operate on razor-thin margins with incredibly complex supply chains. A car assembled in South Carolina might have a transmission from Germany, electronics from Mexico, and steel from Brazil. These tariffs were threatening to raise the cost of production by 10 to 15%.
And that cost inevitably gets passed on to us, the buyers.
Instantly. Dealers were preparing for sticker price hikes of 4 to 10% on new cars. A $40,000 car was about to become a $44,000 car. Those hikes are now expected to be rolled back.
It wasn't just price, though, right? It was actual production logistics.
Yeah.
I read about the Honda Civic Hybrid.
Right. Honda was literally moving production lines around, shuffling where they built engines and transmissions just to dodge the tariff hit. That disrupts efficiency. It slows everything down. Now that pressure is gone. The North American supply chain, the flow of parts between the U.S., Canada, and Mexico is stabilizing.
And this extends to tech as well. I know Learning Resources makes toys, but this applies to Dell, Apple, HP.
Absolutely. Consumers were staring down the barrel of a $100 to $200 price increase on laptops and smartphones in 2026. That is effectively canceled. For a small firm like Learning Resources, this was about survival. A 10 or 20% tariff would have wiped out their profit margins entirely. They would have been operating at a massive loss.
So for you, the listener, the takeaway here is that inflation on imported goods should cool down significantly.
Yes. Things that were about to get much more expensive, electronics, cars, wine, clothes, should stabilize now. There was a huge relief rally in the stock market today, especially for European and Asian exporters like the German car makers.
Now we have to zoom out for a second. The U.S. isn't operating in a vacuum. Just a few weeks ago, January 21st, we had the Greenland 8 situation.
Oh, the Greenland reversal. What a mess. The administration threatened tariffs on NATO allies, then paused them. It was chaotic. This Supreme Court ruling helped settle some of that dust by removing the legal weapon the president was using. But, and here is, the buzzkill global trade is still getting messier.
How so? If the U.S. tariffs are down, aren't we back to normal?
Not quite. Other countries are reacting to the last year of volatility with their own policies. For instance, the EU is ending its de minimis duty exemption in July 2026.
What does that mean in plain English?